Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio this week. My name is Johnny Hemberger. I'm your mental curator. If you're watching this on YouTube, because I do post most of these shows on YouTube, I'm sitting pretty low. This chair, I've got one of these like standing chairs, but it's got me so low because it just sinks slowly. And I'm using the standing chair because my back is absolutely effed. And F stands for frigged. My back is frigged. Anyways, big show this week. We're going to dissect the San Diego Comic-Con, 2018 San Diego Comic-Con, wrapped up recently. And by dissect, I mean, I'm going to go over the things that are most interesting to me. Let's just be honest. And I know that if they're interesting to me, they're going to be interesting to a whole ton of people, but there's no possible way to cover everything that happens at San Diego Comic-Con. I'm limited to 45 minutes of content on Geek Therapy Radio, on the actual big boy radio show. Let's get on to the highlights of the 2018 San Diego Comic-Con. First of which, there's a show on Fox called The Orville. And I say it like that because maybe some people who living under a rock may not have heard of The Orville. But season 2 of Fox's The Orville has been confirmed and has a release date of Sunday, December 30th. Instead of a fall release, it was pushed back to the winter due to Thursday Night Football. So once again, all of us sci-fi fans are getting thwarted by sports. Unless you're a geek about football. Unless you really like football, really like sports, then you can wait for The Orville. But I, for one, I have nothing against football, but I'd rather see The Orville. I've seen enough football. Anyways, so yeah, it's not a fall release. It's being released Sunday, December 30th, the second season of The Orville. And McFarlane says season 2 will have at least 14 episodes rather than the usual or the more appropriate 22 that a fall release would allow for. But McFarlane says he isn't miffed. He says that he'd rather do fewer shows with better content than the full 22 episodes with some filler, which I want to break down that statement a little bit. Maybe he was just speaking off the cuff and didn't realize what he was saying. But why would he even jest that 22 would possibly include filler? It's kind of strange to me. I'd personally rather have every single episode be great, no matter the number. If it's 14 or 22 or 100, I would rather that every episode be amazing. But I do get what he's saying. It's easy to focus on the quality of fewer products than it is to divide attention between more products. So I hope from what he's saying here is that we're going to get 14 absolutely magnificent episodes of The Orville here in season 2, rather than 22 episodes of maybe some not so great. I really don't understand why he said that. Again, I think he just kind of said it off the cuff. But either way, I'm excited about the 14 episodes. Now, critics are divided over the show itself. Obviously, they're not divided over season 2 yet because there's nothing to get divided about yet. But critics are divided. They say, critics are divided in, regardless of the mixed reviews, the audience is there. Whether critics like it or don't like it, The Orville has a huge audience. In my experience, sorry, I just ate some chicken. In my experience, a very large portion of that audience is dedicated Star Trek fans, which is interesting. Let's get into that a little more. Despite CBS having the actual Star Trek series, Star Trek Discovery, many Trekkies, including myself, consider McFarlane's The Orville parody to be the best Star Trek series since The Next Generation. So the best Star Trek currently on TV right now, between a parody and the actual thing, the best Star Trek is the parody. The best Star Trek on right now since The Next Generation is The Orville, which is that is kind of ironic to me. It's funny. Whether or not you like Seth MacFarlane, sorry, I'm running an actual radio show here while I'm recording this. Whether you like Seth MacFarlane or not, I would really go so far as to say that even if you really dislike him, if you can get past some of his well-known shticks, the show itself is extremely satisfying to watch. It's extremely satisfying to Trek fans and even the passing sci-fi fans. So if you can kind of put your bias against MacFarlane aside, The Orville is a great show, but it's an even better Star Trek show. And I know that sounds crazy to say. In my experience, it generally takes the TNG formula, the Next Generation formula, of starting each show with more of an ethical or moral conundrum with the tease of some action. You know, people like to say that TNG was more of a cerebral show. Well, it was a spaghetti western in a lot of parts too. A lot of gunfights, lots of fighting and punching and stuff like that. But at its core, it's more of a cerebral show. And I think to a certain extent, The Orville is like that. In The Orville's case, though, it has a little bit more humor. But for those among us who are Trekkie skeptical of that, it's not too much humor. I mean, TNG also had a little bit of humor, but in The Orville's case, it's not too much. It's not overbearing. You can tell that the point of the show isn't really a vehicle to cram in as many gags as possible, like Family Guy is. Rather, it's to address the ethical story implications first, then only fire off a joke or two where it fits most naturally. So if you haven't watched The Orville because you don't like Seth MacFarlane because Family Guy is too lowbrow and just cherry picking low-hanging fruit jokes, I would advise you to put that notion aside because The Orville isn't focused on all those one-liners. And if you can get past some of MacFarlane's shtick, he does this thing, one of these comic vehicles that he uses. One of these comic vehicles that he uses is, well, I won't explain what it is, but it's kind of annoying to me, and it's overused a little bit. Not in The Orville, it's not used a ton in The Orville, but just in general, it's kind of annoying. Anyway, so they just put in the jokes in The Orville where it kind of fits more naturally. So, again, it is ironic that the best Star Trek show since the 90s isn't even Star Trek at all. It's the parody of Star Trek, The Orville. I like to think, or I kind of imagine that Seth MacFarlane is living out every Trekkie's fan fiction dream by actually getting to produce and write his own version of Star Trek. And it's just icing on the cake that it's the best Star Trek since TNG, that the Orville parody is the best Star Trek since TNG. How many more times can I say that this segment? Honestly, I'd be happy to see Seth MacFarlane hired on to write or direct an actual Star Trek film or show. I think that'd be very interesting to see produced by or written by Seth MacFarlane before an actual Star Trek vehicle. Because I think he loves Star Trek enough that he could make Star Trek great. And again, he is making a great Star Trek called The Orville. Now, I know that when speaking of films, that the Star Trek films are categorically different than the TV series. And they're often afforded more lowbrow, explodey TNA liberties. But that's a separate discussion for a different episode of Geek Therapy Radio entirely. People like to rip on Star Trek movies. Oh, that's so different from the show, and there's all these explosions, and it's just Tokyo Drift in space. Well, it's an hour-and-a-half movie. For me, it's okay. Go to the movies to have some fun. I will let TNG, The Next Generation, be the cerebral, the brain stimulation. But when I go to Star Trek movies now, seeing huge explosions in space and lots of action sequences is very cool to me. And to say that the Star Trek movies have more TNA than the series, have you seen The Next Generation? There is some pretty risque stuff in there, even for 2018 standards. Pretty risque stuff. But it was always wrapped around kind of this ethical conundrum. It was part of like the moral equation, I guess you could call it. But enough about Star Trek and The Orville. I want to get to basically the point is that The Orville is coming out December 30th. 2018. It's getting a winter release. Now let's move on to Aquaman, particularly the new Aquaman movie coming out. I can already tell that this is going to be 2 segments here. We're at 10 and a half minutes, so I'm gonna do my thing on Aquaman, and then we'll pick up with more Comic-Con stuff, San Diego Comic-Con stuff after the break. But let's get into Aquaman before the break. Now, I was never really like huge into comics. I bought plenty back when I was a kid, and honestly, to tell the truth, it was don't laugh at me. Most of the comics I bought were Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah, I know. I know. The rest being the random Batman or X-Men. So I certainly wasn't a massive Aquaman fan. I just had a hiccup. If you know me in the show, hiccups are when you hiccup and burp at the same time. We all done it. It ain't just me. I wasn't the biggest massive fan of Aquaman. Again, just never really got into a story. And apparently his story has changed a whole lot back and forth. Like, just changed depending on who's writing it over the years. So take part of what I'm saying here with a grain of salt, in that I'm not a huge Aquaman fan. Just take what I'm saying here with a grain of salt if you must. But I'm coming at this, as far as the movie trailer, I'm coming at this with a perspective, an average, from the I can't even talk. I have such a hard time talking. I'm coming at this from the perspective of an average moviegoer who also likely doesn't have an encyclopedic knowledge of the Aquaman universe. Someone just seeing the trailer to a new movie that looks interesting. So here are my thoughts on the Aquaman trailer, which was debuted at San Diego Comic-Con. Let's just get right to brass tacks with this. I think your girlfriend's gonna love it. Obviously, Jason Momoa, is that how you pronounce his name, is an Adonis. You might know him from a little show that went under the radar called Game of Thrones. He's probably the hunkiest hunk to ever hunk. So again, your lady is going to love it. It might push some bi-curious men straight off the edge. It might turn some straight men bi, or at least for an hour and a half. Oh gosh, I'm joking. Please don't email me about that. Oh, dear Lord, please just have a sense of humor. Jokes. Anyways, what was I saying? Getting off track. Oh, yeah. The trailer does look pretty neat, but I know myself pretty well. I wouldn't be able to get past things most people wouldn't be bothered by. Like, how can they talk so perfectly underwater? I'm not talking about his telekinesis or whatever, telepathy with fish. How are they opening their mouths and talking underwater so perfectly as if they're just on land and in the air? How can they respire without gills? And I looked up, does Aquaman have gills? Well, yes and no. He did at some point. Now he doesn't have gills and da-da-da. Doesn't matter. He can respire underwater. Without the gills. So if their lungs are filled with water, how would that affect the vocal cords in the first place? Moving the water past the vocal cords. Bringing me back to the whole talking underwater thing. Yeah. You see why I'm not super fun at the movies. Now, I am a little bit of a hypocrite because I like SpongeBob SquarePants. And that spongy fool be lighting straight up campfires under the water. Somehow I can get past that. I am ridiculous. So anyways, also noteworthy on the Aquaman side of things, the Aquaman book will be written for the first time by a woman writer, Kelly Sue DeConnick. Am I pronouncing that right? Kelly Sue DeConnick is taking over and plans to take Aquaman in a new direction. With that, let's end the segment here. We'll come back to more San Diego Comic-Con highlights here in a moment. In the break, if you're listening to the podcast or watching on YouTube, this doesn't really super duper apply. You might hear one short spot, but in this break, be sure you're subscribed to Geek Therapy Radio Podcast. Make sure you're all subbed up on YouTube and following the Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter and all that stuff. Just search for Geek Therapy Radio with Johnny Hamburger. It will all come up. Geek Therapy Radio on Facebook, Geek Therapy Radio Instagram, Geek Therapy Radio on Twitter, Geek Therapy Radio on YouTube, all that good stuff. And that being said, we'll be back in just a few moments with more Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger, reminding you that we are all geeks about something. Who among us doesn't love great beer, amazing food, and arcade games? That's why I'm stoked beyond geek belief to tell you about Kung Fu Saloon, located at 5317 Washington Avenue, right here in Houston. Kung Fu Saloon on Washington Avenue has the geek trinity covered, and then some. Of course they have the most excellent beer on tap, the nomiest food off the grill, and the vintage arcade games we love. But you can also get your Tay-Tay on with karaoke, your super fan on with televised sports, and your rug cut to the best music and DJs on Washington Avenue. In addition to arcade games, get your competitive fix with Giant Jenga, Giant Connect 4, 3 skee-ball lanes, shuffleboard, and foosball. Get your drink, food, game, karaoke, and dance on. Or step to Street Fighter 2 with me and get your geek fanny served. Hadouken! Kung Fu Saloon, 5317 Washington Avenue. Visit www.kungfusaloonhouston.com for more details and dress code info. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. Johnny Hamburger here, your mental curator. Let's just get straight into more Comic-Con stuff. By the way, did you subscribe to Geek Therapy Radio on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff during the break? Hope you did. You'll get a chance after the show's done as well. Let's move on, shall we? More Comic-Con stuff. I'm going to immediately stop talking like that. Rugrats. Remember the Rugrats? 90s nostalgia seems to be at a fever pitch, but it's still pretty neat news that the Rugrats is being revived as a film and Nickelodeon series. However, at best, it's probably going to be a decent... at best, it's probably going to be decent and utterly god-awful. But let me explain. Both the new TV series and movie will include the original characters while introducing new ones. I guess that's to be expected. Frankly, I'm surprised that they are going to keep the original characters. Some of them, at least. We don't know. It's not made yet. I thought it was just going to be all new characters. That's what I would have suspected. But nope, it's both. It's both. Sarah makes fun of me that I put an L in both. Both. Anyways, so new and old characters. Also, with a ray of hope, the 3 original series creators will be on board as executive producers. Probably, hopefully, and maybe reasonably expected to have a reasonable amount of creative involvement. One could hope. But anyways, the movie, however, so the show might be okay. The series on TV might be okay. The revived series could be good. The movie, however, right off the bat, I can tell that it sounds like it could be worse than the contents of Chucky's loaded diaper. Holy crap, it sounds like it's going to be a straight-up diaper fire. It is said to feature a blend of live-action actors and CGI characters. God help us all. God help us all. Speaking of that little Winnie the Pooh, there's a new Winnie the Pooh movie coming out. I'm blanking out on the name of it. It's called Mr. Oh my gosh. There's so much stuff floating around in my geek brain that sometimes things just get lost. But it's a new Winnie the Pooh movie. The point is that as I'm saying that this Rugrats movie is going to be a blend of CGI and real life characters and that it sounds awful, previews for the Winnie the Pooh movie is arguably the same thing and looks like it would be pretty cute, pretty good, not bad because of... I'm saying that it's not going to be terrible because of the CGI inclusion. I mean, for the love of God, Jurassic Park and Jurassic World and all that, every movie you ever watch has CGI, computer-generated characters in it, graphics in it. But the reason why I think the Rugrats movie is going to be god-awful is... think about what the Rugrats look like. Think about that animation style, period. And what the human beings look like. Could you imagine a CGI-generated Tommy? That is nightmare fuel. It's one thing to animate a dinosaur or a stuffed animal like Winnie the Pooh or Tigger, or Piglet, anything like that. It's another thing to take like a very abstract idea of what human babies look like and then make them look realistic in CGI and stuff. That sounds like a nightmare. But I don't know. Maybe it'll be good. Nothing's been put to paper yet. They haven't even started production on this thing. Off the bat, it sounds horrific and horrifying. Terrible nightmare fuel. On to more bad news. The Power Rangers team up with Street Fighter. Let that sink in just for a second. The Power Rangers are teaming up with Street Fighter in a new short film, and the trailer makes my heart hurt. It looks so world-rockingly bad, and the dialogue gave me those Jim Carrey dry heaves, which I will try to emulate here, which is why you should probably go see Geek Therapy Radio on YouTube and subscribe, because if you're listening on the radio, you can't see this. It probably sounded bad. But the Jim Carrey dry heaves that he's famous for, most famously in Dumb and Dumber. Anyways, that's what the trailer, this little Power Rangers and Street Fighter teaming up short film trailer looked like to me. It looks horrible. Now, I love Street Fighter. That's an understatement. If you have listened to the show for any length of time, you know that I adore Street Fighter. Honestly, I don't have anything against the Power Rangers, really. I think the Power Rangers came along just after I was out of that kind of age demographic. But I don't hate the Power Rangers at all. I actually interviewed Johnny Young Bosch a few years ago. The interview was terrible, and it never saw the light of day. That's just because I didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't anything against him. Anyways, yeah, so nothing against each party separately. But when they both come together, at least in this form, it's bad. Separately, both of their stories, like the Street Fighter story, I'll admit, and the Power Rangers story, are acceptably terrible. Shadow Lu and M. Bison and all that stuff, it's a pretty terrible story. But it's kind of, in the Power Rangers stuff, terrible story, all of it. But it's acceptable. And it's part of, I would argue that it's part of both franchises' charm. But together, it is a brain vomit with seemingly plenty of stylish, as far as the trailer goes, blending the two stories together is brain vomit with seemingly plenty of stylish 12 FPS reduced frame rate fight scenes peppered in to slosh around your cranium. Gross. So just brain vomit and fight scene. It looks bad. You know what I'm talking about with that 12 frames per second reduced frame rate? I'm not talking about reduced frame or reduced speed. It's not slow motion or anything like that, but they kind of chop the frame rate in half to make it look more jumpy and actiony. Looks like plenty of that to cover up the fact that it's pretty bad. I am not a fan of this. Especially this trailer. Maybe your kids will like it. Who knows? And if someone likes it, I can't argue against them. Like, we're all geeks about something. If you really like this short Street Fighter Power Rangers film, more power to you. I mean, that's wonderful. I am jealous that I can't like it because it looks horrible. It sounds horrible, the dialogue in it. I thought M. Bison was dead. How about we revived him and the evil Empress gave him even more power? Okay, Star Trek Discovery Season 2. We just spent the first segment, most of it talking about the Orville. Now let's get on to Star Trek Discovery Season 2. All I gotta say about this is Spock will make an appearance. So that's neat. Jonathan Frakes, who was Commander Riker on The Next Generation and directs Discovery, confirmed as much. That's all I gotta say about it. Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Spock is gonna come on. Moving on down the announcements list, the highlights from San Diego Comic-Con list. And again, to reframe this, there's no way I can cover everything that happened at Comic-Con. I only have a certain amount of time in this show to cover stuff, so I'm trying to get through it as quickly as possible. What I do have: Mega Man Fully Charged. It's coming to Mega Man is coming to Cartoon Network as a 3D animated series. I loved Mega Man video games growing up. I still adore them now, actually. They still hold up amazingly today. Even Poppin' Mega Man 2. Whoop! Such an It's Nintendo hard. When you've heard that description to describe games as being difficult and they say it's Nintendo hard, they're talking about Mega Man 2. Arguably and specifically talking about Mega Man 2. But it's such a good game. It's a very rewarding game. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not rewarding. And you can't rage quit with old Nintendo games. Ever play through Castlevania? You die at the last boss, you're done, son. Game over. No save states. No save points. God of War can be really, really hard, but there's a save point within 5 feet of you in any direction. It's not like the old days where you started with 3 lives and that was it. And if you lost them, you could be 2 hours into the game if you're doing really well, and then if you lose your last life, you're done. Afternoon wasted. Remember pausing your Nintendo and leaving it on for days? Because you couldn't save games. You'd be playing through Mario Brothers or something like that. When it first, Mario Brothers is easy now, but any game, doesn't matter. You'd pause it because you couldn't save it. And then your mom would turn it off accidentally and just your whole world would explode. Or your brother would blackmail you with it or be mean. I'm halfway through Mario Brothers 2, don't turn it off. Click. He wants to play Double Dragon. Anyways, moving on. Back to Mega Man Fully Charged, 3D animated series coming to Cartoon Network. The new TV series looks like Robot Paw Patrol. So I'll pass. Nothing against Paw Patrol, nothing against Mega Man, but it's so cartoony and it is not how I pictured Mega Man sounding like or acting like. So I'll pass. Robot Paw Patrol. That's what new Mega Man Fully Charged is. I'd be more excited about it if it was a bit more gritty. But I can already tell that it's meant to grab children, a new generation, into the Mega Man universe to sell them some new games. Obviously, that's what's happening here. I just hope that the games that come out of this will be good. But I'm not getting my hopes up. For now, it's just going to be the old Mega Mans and Mega Man X series on Super Nintendo, and there's been a few other good Mega Man games. Moving on to Archer, Season 10 confirmed. Don't really know what much else to say about this, other than it'll take place in space. That's confirmed. Archer can be, this is my own personal opinion, Archer can be really funny. I just have to be in a mood for the constant, loud, often overbearing amount of dialogue. It's like a funny Gilmore Girls as far as the ceaseless onslaught of never-ending talking. And I know I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite here because this is a radio show, but radio shows you have to keep talking. Podcast, you have to keep talking. It's long format. If you'll notice, if you watch these on YouTube, I don't do the jump cuts in here because it doesn't make sense. Yes, you can fit 15 minutes of dialogue into 5 minutes of jump cuts. Probably. You get what I'm saying, though. You can really trim down the size of your videos doing the jump cuts, but this long format radio. So all I'm saying is Archer talks so much talk, talk, just like Gilmore Girls. Ceaseless, never ending dialogue. Breathless dialogue. Anyways, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that I have to be in the right mood for the dialogue bombardment. On that note, I like Bob's Burgers much better than Archer. It's more relaxed, more slowed down. It is cripplingly funny. Bob's Burgers is where it's at for me. And now, the last little story from Comic-Con that I wanted to get to because it's sucking up 2 segments of this week's episode of Geek Therapy Radio. I hope you've been enjoying it so far, by the way. Deadpool. Now, I haven't heard, unless I'm missing something, and if you're listening to this in a format that allows you to comment below or anything like that, especially on YouTube or Spreaker or iHeartRadio app or wherever allows you to comment, let me know. But I haven't heard of a new Deadpool movie coming out. I know there is. You know there's going to be many more Deadpool movies. But the point I'm getting at here is that at San Diego Comic-Con, Ryan Reynolds says that he wants to explore Deadpool's pansexuality in more movies. So that could be fun. Deadpool is already pretty darn zany. And if Deadpool is wanting to, if Ryan Reynolds is wanting to explore more possibilities of Deadpool making love to different inanimate objects and indiscriminate people. that could add to a level of hilarity. I'm just saying it's interesting. Ryan Reynolds, as far as we can tell, straight, married, has kids. He's like, yeah, not just bisexual. He didn't say he wanted to get into more bisexual. He's a pansexual, everything, which I think lends itself to way more comedic fodder, comedic firepower than just simply being gay isn't like part of. I mean, it's certainly not funny. It's just someone's sexuality, and I guess so is pansexuality. But you see what I'm saying here? It's Deadpool. You put this all in the context of Deadpool. If Deadpool was just gay, then big whoop. And even the fact that he's pansexual, big whoop. But in the Deadpool universe, in the context of what Ryan Reynolds does with that Deadpool character, that could be pretty funny. That's going to end this segment of Geek Therapy Radio. We'll be right back with a couple more segments. Honestly, I don't know what we're going to get into next. We'll talk a little bit about the MacBook Pro. I'm tired of beating this horse. It's not quite yet a dead horse, but I feel like I should mention it since this is the broadcast version of Geek Therapy Radio. It's not my little midweek geek thing. But that just goes to say you should be subscribed to Geek Therapy Radio podcast, because you can get that midweek geek where I can cover things more in depth, like the MacBook Pro overheating thermal throttling issue. And you also get this big podcast, 45 minutes. Everything is nice and easy and digestible. So do that during the break. Subscribe to all the stuff, Geek Therapy Radio, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff. And we will be back in just a moment with more Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Stick around. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I am super stoked because I did find a guest for this week. CJ, and his YouTube channel is CJKnowsTECH. Is that right, CJ?
That is correct.
CJ is, I subbed to him a few days ago, and I honestly, CJ, I found you because I was doing all this research with the ongoing 2018 MacBook Pro dramas, I guess is an light way to put that. But I know that you are reasonably invested into the Mac OS universe, and I told you something on your channel today that I think it's a little bit childish. You're not childish, but when PC users kind of, can I say, throw shade on Mac users?
Definitely.
Because people can buy whatever they want. And my whole outlook for this whole 2018 MacBook Pro dilemma was just that I wanted people to get what they paid for. Whether they pay for a PC or a Mac, it doesn't matter as long as they're getting what they're paid for. And can you tell us a little bit, and this is not to beat down Apple, it's just kind of to hold them accountable. Would you agree with me that perhaps maybe in the 2019 MacBook Pro that you wouldn't mind seeing it be a little thicker to have a little bit better cooling? What do you think on all that?
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't mind that, especially if that equals the performance and us getting the true capability of an i9 chip. Definitely, with all means, you can add a little more bulk to it. For a Pro machine, I wouldn't mind that, to be totally honest.
Yeah. So what Mac devices do you have right now? Do you use any as your daily driver?
Yeah, right now, after I returned the MacBook Pro, I exchanged it for an iMac Pro. So currently, I just switched as the iMac Pro for my daily driver. Before that, I had a custom PC. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing. The people from the PC world, they'll quickly bash, but they don't realize, I respect the custom PC world tremendously.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I've stated this, that I don't have anything against, I'm rooting for the MacBook Pro. I want it to be great. And honestly, in 2019, if they tweak that little formula they have right now, which in 2018 is finally, and I can say this over the air, I can say the A word, the form over function has kind of bitten Apple in the ass this year, and as evidenced by the 2018 MacBook Pro. But if Apple really listens to us, if they really hear the cries of us in the tech universe and the tech world and all over YouTube and reviewers, that we would gladly accept a thicker device, because it wouldn't be that much bigger. It would still be sleek and sexy, and they can keep the price. They can charge more. I don't care what the price is. Just have it function. You're going to slap in a beefy i7 or an i9 in there. Let's use it to a more acceptable capability. So honestly, I'm coming from a PC user mainly. I've got an iPad, but my day-to-day is done on PC. I would probably reward Apple for listening to our cries if the 2019 MacBook Pro was a little thicker.
I definitely agree. To see Apple actually give their ear to the creators and and offer up this update in this short amount of time. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that Apple is leaning towards, giving us an ear, a proper ear, and maybe, they have room. They have room with how sleek and how small it is right now. They do have room to, add a little bit of extra bulk in order to add a proper cooling for sure.
That's true. I've made the same argument with smartphones that for a while there, they kept making them so thin until the point where it bit the Note 7. Remember the Galaxy Note 7 bursting in the flames? They tried to make it so thin and still cram in so much battery that I said after that, is like smartphones, I think what consumers would really wouldn't mind an extra millimeter or two just to fit a bigger battery, just to have the extra battery life. And I think the kind of same goes for Apple here. And honestly, I'm not so fully invested in the reason I don't have an iMac or a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air or anything like that is just because this is a big key to it, and I want your opinion on this too. It depends on what your workflow is, what you use. If you're using Premiere, then maybe MacBook Pro isn't the best option for you. I use Cakewalk Sonar for most of my audio editing. If I was more into Pro Tools, or if I use GarageBand or something like that, then I would have more incentive to use Mac. So what would your advice be for people looking at computers who are really liking the sleek sexiness of the MacBook Pro or the iMac or whatever? What do you think they should consider before buying a PC or a Mac?
Well, the point you touched on is very important, your workflow and the apps that you use. Now, I got hit to Mac a long time ago from the Pro Tools world. I do audio engineering, and I did it for a long time, and Pro Tools and Mac, that was just the go-to. And I have Logic as well too, and that's a good alternative as well. But when it comes to video editing, Premiere Pro is my choice. Now, it's kind of upsetting that Premiere is offered on macOS, but it's not optimized for the proper performance on macOS. And I don't want to be forced to go into Final Cut. So you got to think about that. I had to pay a pretty penny in order to use Premiere Pro comparable to like my custom PC on Apple. So it depends on what your workflow and what your needs are. So in the last few minutes here, we're about 6 minutes in, let's get a little more personal. On Geek Therapy Radio, my main motto is that we're all geeks about something, and it's okay and encouraged to embrace your inner geek, because that kind of helps us through the doldrums of life, and even can help us with depression, even if we find a new hobby or rekindle an old hobby. You hit on that you were, and probably still are, an audio engineer. I went to school for audio engineering out in North Hollywood. I'm in Houston right now, but that is my background, and I got certified in Pro Tools and everything. It just so happens that I prefer Cakewalk Sonar now. I can still use Pro Tools. It's fine. So let's get into a little bit of your background. What I know you've got the tech YouTube, but what are some things? What are your geek things, CJ? What do you geek about? Okay, first and foremost, yes, audio engineering is something I definitely geeked about. And the funny thing, you brought up North Hollywood. I used to live in Los Angeles. I currently reside in the Midwest, but I'm from Los Angeles, and for a long time that was my geeked out, like my thing. And now video editing and film production is something that has caught my eye, which I get to kind of play with that with the avenue of YouTube. So I love creating. I love camera tech. And I love creating like awesome little film things and putting them together. And that's where my love for YouTube. So right now I'm geeking out on YouTube and film and video editing and production.
It's funny you say that, because I was having a conversation the other day with someone. His name was Mike, and he is going to school for audio engineering and all that. And he helped me record a video the other day because he said he wanted to get into the video side of things. And we're having this little talk, and I said, that if you have a solid background in audio engineering, that lends itself, it's like it lessens the learning curve getting into video editing, because you're editing clips, you're tweaking clips and doing fades in and out. You just think about the video kind of like a sound wave, and that already gives you the leg up. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. Like the whole editing flow, like if you look at it, like exactly how you said, like cutting, trimming, adding fades, I'm doing the exact thing with videos. They're blocks the same way that audio are blocks. And that has carried over tremendously, and that makes the workflow and the grind. I'm able to sit there for hours and do it without any hesitation, because that's what I did with audio.
Right, because that's it's also what we enjoy. Is there something you enjoy outside of YouTube? Like, let's say you get away from the computer monitor. Is there anything else that you're into? Maybe cars or astronomy, anything like that?
Oh,
you don't have to.
Cars. No. Cars is something I'm definitely into. That's another thing I love. I've always loved cars from a young age. So, I'm just, whether I'm looking at them or, sometimes I watch car reviews on YouTube, whether I'm aspiring for the next car in the future, you know what I mean? Trying to put out that law of attraction for that, dream car. So real quick, I asked Austin Evans the same thing. Favorite old car and dream new car? Favorite old car, I would have to go with old Dodge Viper. Oh yeah, that was my model. I had a model car, like a diecast Dodge Viper red one, and 90s. I love that thing.
90s.
And as far as a new car right now, you know what I'm gonna say. And I'm gonna say that Tesla Roadster. I just saw the specs on it, and I've never gotten into like electric cars because I like muscle and I like the sound and I like to hear the engine roar. But the specs on that Roadster, I just want to get in it and press the gas, the throttle, and just feel it.
Have you? It's okay. So we'll make this segment a little bit longer because now you got me all you got me all bristled up here. The Tesla Roadster. 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds, 1.9 seconds. And have you read or seen anything, and I might be about to blow your mind, that Elon Musk says he's offering a trim package that actually includes rocket boosters?
I think I may have seen a tweet or some kind of thing on that, but that's crazy. That's just how that guy mind goes. So I'm curious what the stats would be with those type of things.
That's what I'm saying. It's already 1.9 seconds without the rocket boosters. Now, the rocket boosters are going to be compressed air. He's taking out the back seats and putting in big air canisters, and the batteries are going to charge up the air pressure. And then, so when you put into launch mode or whatever. But I'm just thinking, how much faster can you get to 60 when you're already doing under 2 seconds? And how is that going to shatter the bones in your body when you're accelerating that fast? That's crazy. But Musk is going to do it.
Oh, definitely. I have no doubt in my mind. That guy, if he puts it out there, he's definitely looking at a way to do it for sure.
His official response is like, well, you're taking out the back seat. Elon Musk was like, it's barely big enough for kids back there anyways. No one's going to use it. So we're just making an option where we rip out the back seats and put rocket thrusters back there. CJ, this is your time. Plug whatever you want. We're coming to the end of the segment. Take it away.
All right, guys, my name is CJ. I run a YouTube channel called CJKnowsTECH, youtube.com/CJKnowsTECH. I love to talk tech, sneakers, and anything creative. I mainly stem around tech and film and things around camera tech and so forth. So if you're ever looking for a humorous, fun tech review, come check me out, youtube.com/CJKnowsTECH.
Awesome. CJ, thanks for being on Geek Therapy Radio this week.
Thank you for having me.
That's going to do it for this episode of Geek Therapy Radio. My eternally thanks for CJ, to CJ for coming on Geek Therapy Radio this week. Make sure you're going to YouTube and subscribing to his channel. It's called CJ Knows Tech. Just type it into the search bar up there. It'll come up. You'll see his beautiful mug, and you'll subscribe. His production value is so high. His cameras are so nice and crispy. I'm jealous of his audio-visual setup over there, but he has really good content. CJ Knows Tech. Go check him out. While you're at it, subscribe to Geek Therapy Radio, also on YouTube, but also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And go visit my blog at kprcradio.com and just click on shows and blogs and go to Geek Therapy Radio. You'll see it there and check out the blog there. Also on 945thebuzz.com or 945buzz.com. The blog is there too. Be good to each other, my geeks. Take care and take care of yourselves. And I'll see you next week for more Geek Therapy Radio.